Here with my main man, Stuckey, who Kentucky was once a basketball school, then it became a football school. I think it's fair to say it's complete basketball school once again. From Lexington, Kentucky, Stuckey, 19-15-1 on the season. What's up, bro?
Oh, what's going on, brother? Yeah, just grinding away and football, and yeah, Kentucky loses to Vanderbilt, and their reward is Georgia this weekend. So it'll be a fun weekend, at least for the bars here. I got a bunch of people coming into town, and maybe Georgia will lose like 10 fumbles or something. So yeah, it's on to basketball season in Lexington.
Kentucky win yesterday in hoops?
No, they lost. They're not. Maybe they're like a baseball school now. They lost in double overtime.
Well, where do you want to start? Let's start with the Fighting Jeff Saturdays, who I don't know about you, but I guess I had just assumed that Sam Ehlinger was just going to stay the starter, and then we got a little bit of a curveball in warm-ups. I was watching Red Zone. They're like, Matt Ryan's on the field warming up as the starter, and then obviously he's actually played decent, beats the Raiders. Now they're getting the Eagles at home off a loss. A lot of momentum for our boy Saturday. I don't know. I mean, I kind of like the Colts, but that might be an overreaction. And I'm not even just talking with the point spread. It does feel like short week for the Eagles, first time kind of licking their wounds. I mean, you can go fucking 13-4 and have an incredible season. What do you think about the outright upset and just who you taking in this game?
Yeah, I think the Colts have a really good chance of winning this game. You mentioned the short week, which I think matters here a lot because the Eagles defense was on the field forever. I think Washington ran 50 plays in the first half, the most in a half in any half this year in the NFL. So their defense has to be gassed on a short week now going on the road. And guess what? Indianapolis is going to take the same exact approach that Washington did. Jonathan Taylor looked healthy last week. Their offensive line had the best week of their season by far. We talked about that unit last week. And they're just going to pound Jonathan Taylor here. And the Eagles' run defense is extremely vulnerable without Jordan Davis, the big man from Georgia inside. With him on the field, only allowing 3.9 yards per carry. Without him, 5.1. You saw the Steelers even have success running it. You saw Washington just control the ball, keep that Eagles offense on the sidelines the entire game. Not to mention, the Eagles have some other injuries. A.J. Brown rolled up his ankle. I think he's going to play, but we'll see how healthy he is. They lost Dallas Goedert. That's a big loss, especially against the Colts, who play a lot of zone, struggle with tight ends.
And he's going on IR, so that's something to
yeah.
monitor just for their offense, just in general.
Yeah, they also put Avonte Maddox on IR. They're a really good slot corner. So this is a team, it's a really good team, the Eagles. But they've, played a cupcake schedule, have gotten a lot of breaks. They've been really healthy. Going into last week, they were plus 16 in turnover margin. The next best was the Vikings at plus 8. So they were due to get some bounces and maybe some injuries that they'll have to deal with. But I think the Colts can build on what they did last week. I think they're kind of rallying around Saturday. You got a healthy Jonathan Taylor now, and they're just going to lean on him. I think this is way too many points, especially this year in this scoring environment with scoring down. Totals in games that totals are 47 or less, underdogs this year of over a field goal are 46-19 against the spread. So yeah, I think this is way too many points.
Well, I mean, the team that beat him on Monday night, I think we all knew what was coming. Taylor Heineke will stay the quarterback. I thought that stat that they threw up on Monday night, I mean, you know these pretty well. I mean, it was news to me that he was 9-9 going into that game as a starter when the other starters over that period of time post Cousins, I think, was like 18-37. Obviously, after he wins that game, I mean, they're 10-9. So, I mean, this is not, the Steelers here. This is a pretty shitty franchise. They'll take that all day long. Coming into Houston, who, I don't know. I mean, Davis Mills, I think, is destined to head back to the backup seat next year when they draft a quarterback, but it's kind of a weird team. I mean, they play in just ugly games. They keep it close. Washington's not exactly the 07 Patriots on offense. Who do you like here?
Yeah, if you can get 3.5, I like Houston. It's ugly. You got to hold your nose. But, they played better the last 2 weeks after getting thrashed by Tennessee. Last week they outgained the Giants 387 to 367, averaged 6.5 yards per play. they just couldn't score in the red zone. They had 6 red zone trips, 1 touchdown. But I think you're getting Washington also in a bad spot, right? They beat the Eagles, emotional win. Now on a short week, you go on the road again to play, lowly
Shitty team.
Houston team. Yeah. So I think because of that Washington result, though, you're getting 3.5 instead of arguably what would have been 2.5, 2 if Washington lost and if Houston won, which they probably should have if you look at the box score. And they played the Eagles pretty tough too. This Washington team is feisty, and I think they are better with Heineke. But now you're asking Heineke and this team to win by margin on the road by more than a field goal. And like I just said, scoring is down across the NFL. Getting over a field goal with totals of 47 or less. Like I just said, 46-19 against the spread this year. So yeah, I think that it's a good spot for the Texans, and I think you're getting a little additional value right around the biggest key number in NFL betting of 3. So if you can get 3.5, I like Washington a little bit. I mean, I like the Texans here a little bit.
Chase Young's coming back. Do you think, let's just hypothetical world, let's say Washington wins this game pretty soundly, double digits. Do you think there's value in them moving forward with that front and with Heineke playing solid as an underdog against, the Cowboys, the Eagles? They play the Niners, I think, on the road. They'll be an underdog. Is there a value in that team moving forward, or is it just still hard to trust them in your mind?
Yeah, no, I think with Young back. The other thing is Houston has a pretty good offensive line. Tunsil's one of the best tackles in the NFL this year, which helps them a little bit here. But yeah, I do think Washington will be feisty as an underdog. There's different stories.
They have a great defensive line,
Yeah, which can cause a lot of havoc. Their offensive line is also playing pretty well. Really good offensive line coach there. And yeah, they have some talent on the outside. They have a court, Heineke's like a gunslinger, so you don't really like taking him. He's kind of gives me Winston vibes.
Yeah.
Because and Winston is awesome, was awesome in his career as an underdog, awful as a favorite because he'll make some risky throws. He'll kill you with some turnovers sometimes. But yeah, they'll be feisty, especially in the NFC where you look around and it's like, okay, we got the Niners. Do you really believe in the Vikings? There's just not a lot of good teams in the NFC. So yeah, I think Washington will be an intriguing underdog all season.
Well, a big divisional rematch coming up in LA, which probably be like a Kansas City home game. But I think the Chargers look pretty good on Sunday. They came to play without their 2 big horses at wide receiver. And I mean, it sure looks like those 2 guys are back this week. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. If they would have had those guys healthy against the Niners, the game the Niners played, who knows? I mean, they fucking probably win that game. Now they lost another defensive tackle. They've lost a lot of bodies here. But, I think Khalil Mack's playing pretty well. Herbert looks pretty fantastic given who he's been playing with. We've talked a lot about the Chiefs, and they beat the Jaguars, I guess, pretty soundly. But for the most part, against better teams, I guess they blew out the 49ers. But this game earlier in the season easily could have been a Chargers win. And I think, was it last year, the Chargers beat them on the road? So the Herbert and the Chargers and Brandon Staley have had success, just over the last year and a half against this team, right? So you're getting this amount of points at home. It does feel like there's some value on the Chargers.
Yeah, I like the Chargers here. I mean, it's massive if they get, and they're both slated to come back with Allen and Williams. I mean, their receivers have just been, and they're both so key for a number of reasons. Mike Williams stretches the field. Keenan Allen, the Chargers have I think to their default sometimes, to their own fault sometimes with Lombardi calling plays, there's too many short passes, but that's where Keenan Allen in the slant, which is just so important to that offense. His ability on third downs, short passes is so massive. But yeah, I think that this is way too many points. You can get, there's +6 out there. It was 7 earlier in the week when there was uncertainty around these receivers. But if you look earlier in the year, the Chargers were +3.5 at Kansas City, and they covered that game. Arguably should have won. Mahomes had 3 picks dropped. Herbert throws a pick 6 at the 1-yard line that got returned. It was threw a pick at the end zone when they were about to go in. It was a very unlucky game for the Chargers. And why is it a good matchup for them? The Chargers' run defense is bad. Their pass defense, a lot of talent. You mentioned Mack. Their secondary is still really strong. They have a really good pass defense. Well, the Chiefs don't really run it, and they've really struggled to run the ball this year. Chargers are down to like fourth and fifth string defensive tackles too. Doesn't really hurt them in this particular matchup. Chiefs defense is still a little sketchy. It's a bottom 10 defense. Justin Herbert, catching 6 at home against the Chiefs. I'll take that all day, especially with the receivers back. Also, the Chiefs, their statistical profile a little skewed. They played the Cardinals week 1, who had about 8 defensive starters out. Remember when they played the Niners had about 6 or 7 defensive starters out.
And lost some guys in the game.
Yeah, like they were just crushed. And then, they played the Titans with their backup quarterback. So they've had a pretty fortunate schedule so far. Now, they're still one of the best teams in the NFL. When Mahomes is on, he's tough to stop. But the Chargers have kept up every time they've played. Herbert is 4-1 against the spread against the Chiefs in his career, 2-3 straight up. His losses were by 3, 3, and 6 in overtime. So he hasn't trailed by more than 3 points at the end of regulation in all 5 meetings with the Chiefs. And if you're going to fade Mahomes, you do it when he's a favorite of over a field goal, where he's 28-31-1 against the spread. If he's a favorite of 3 or less or an underdog, he's 17-5-1 against the spread. So, yeah, I like the Chargers here. This game is massive for their season, and I think they match up pretty well with the Chiefs. They can match score for score here. Eckler should have a big day as well.
I'd imagine that. I mean, Brady has a lot more, games, but, I would imagine Brady as an underdog over the years was pretty potent.
Yeah. It's
kind of Mahomesy.
Brady as an underdog or a favorite, a short favorite, historically. This year he dropped. I think he dropped.
Yeah, siphon this year out. I bet historically it's got to be pretty unreal.
Unbelievable, yeah.
I mean, technically, it's I don't know if it's game of the week. It'd be right up there. When it looked like Dallas was going to beat Green Bay and Minnesota had already won, this would have been, for seeding, and especially with the Eagles losing, this Dallas would have been right there in the mix. But Dallas blowing that game really hurts. It really does, because I'm a believer. I think the Giants are going to come back to earth, and I actually think the Lions could clip them. But then they play Dallas, Commanders, Eagles, Vikings. Like, it wouldn't shock me to see the Vikings, the Giants, who've had an incredible season, just miss the playoffs. But Dallas, to me, is still pretty good. -1.5 on the road, almost like, is Minnesota not getting respect here? Like, how many teams at home with that record would be an underdog? What am I missing here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the market really believes in the Vikings. And by the way, Brady 37-18-2 against the spread in his career as an underdog or favorite of less than a field goal.
Do you believe in the Vikings?
No, not really. I mean, if you look at, I think they're a pretty good team, and they're dead average across the board. No matter what you look at, you could look at any power ratings. You could look at their yards per play, their net yards per play, anything. You could look at their estimated wins this year based on win probability at the end of games, 4.5. That's 17th in the league.
I mean, they were getting the shit kicked out of them in that game with the Bills driving, and I don't know where you stand on that going forward on 4th and 2, but they had nothing. Obviously, when he throws the pick, the momentum completely changed. But Cousins has been terrible. They look lifeless. If it wasn't for an 80-yard huge run for Cook, I mean, that's a blowout.
Yeah, there was a 90. The Bills had a 99.4% post-game win expectancy, the second highest since 2014. That looks at the totality of the game. I think the Vikings recovered like 4 or 5 fumbles. They also have some turnover regression coming. I just mentioned they were +8, which is the second highest in the NFL. But yeah, across the board, no matter what you look at, offensive profile, defensive profile, Jefferson's obviously tremendous, but they're just an average team. Like, they're an average NFL team. Jefferson is really good, but their defense has holes. And yeah, I mean, they've won 7 straight, all by 1 possession. And they've been outgained and outplayed in a lot of those games. They're not going to continue to get all of the bounces here. And, when I look at this from a matchup perspective, so it's a good spot. Number one, Dallas coming off that loss against Green Bay. Minnesota coming off that electric win in one of the, best games of the year. But, when I look at Minnesota, they're allowing the 3rd highest pressure rate in the NFL. Dallas is the 2nd highest pressure rate on defense. Cousins has been really poor under pressure. Their stud left tackle, Darrisaw, has played unbelievably well. He's in concussion protocol. If he doesn't play, that's really problematic. But I think Dallas can get a lot of pressure here. And they can move the ball. The Vikings just have been getting very fortunate with turnovers, and they're on the opposite end of the spectrum of Green Bay. They're dead last in the NFL in drive success rate on defense. So, I think ultimately what's going to happen here is Dallas is going to move the ball consistently. They're going to get pressure on Cousins, which is going to kill a few drives, potentially pressure him into a few mistakes. And I think the one possession luck of Minnesota finally runs out.
Do you think Dallas is still alive for the division, or do you think Philly just that's more of a one-off? And even if they do lose 3 games, Dallas's margin for error is basically 0.
Yeah, it's the problem is, I mean, the Eagles have 1 win. The Cowboys will get the Eagles again, but if you look at the Eagles' schedule, you're going to have to get some losses there. Now, maybe they lose at the Colts this week, which will help, but they're home against the Packers, home against the Titans. Maybe they're tricky, but then they get the Giants, Bears, Saints, Giants again, and then that game at Dallas. So their schedule is extremely easy. So it's hard to see a lot of wins. That overtime loss really hurt Dallas, as you said. So they're probably it's probably too much of an uphill climb to get to the division. But they'll be.
One thing when you look at the stats on Geno, who's had a fantastic season, they are 6-4. It's not like they're 8-2, and they've gotten he couldn't really have played much better. I mean, is there a chance? Because I'm a believer the Giants regress. Are they a team now? Their schedule isn't crazy hard, but are we sure Seattle's a lock to be a 10-win team?
No, I mean I think they have flaws. I mean, if you look at who they've beat, and when they went up against good competition, like they got drilled by San Francisco. Tampa Bay has looked lifeless all year.
Shoved them around.
Really in control of that game. So yeah, if you can shut down their run game, their defense has played a lot better. And they have some really good, promising young corners. It's a better team than myself and anyone that projected, but they're probably just like a slightly below average team instead of one of the worst in the NFL. I think for them is
they get the Raiders coming up. I mean,
but then the division, which was supposed to be a lot tougher, is not as tough as it was. But yeah, they get the Raiders at home. They're at the Rams, who don't have Cup now, and
they play the Rams twice. I mean, so that's
they have the Panthers, the Raiders at home, the Jets at home, the Rams at home. The Rams again, and then they're at the Chiefs. So yeah, they potentially could get the 10 wins. I think that's their ceiling, but it would be mostly just, hey, look, Arizona is not as good. They're struggling this year, and the Rams are just a shell of themselves, and now don't have Cup and are just going nowhere fast. So it's probably more of an indictment of they're improved a little bit, but their division and the NFC as a whole and their schedule is extremely favorable. So but I don't think that they're like a profile as a 10-win team. If you play this season over again 100 times, they're probably around maybe an 8-win team.
Well, Stuckey, good luck this weekend. Let's win some cash.
Absolutely. Good luck, brother.